good afternoon, Dr. Frederick. A very warm welcome to you. As India faces most serious security coming from radicalization and religious extremism, particularly in the internal security domain, our society as well as our state institutions are still very puzzled to find out the exact solutions for this major problem. Among many strategic quarters, it's generally discussed and also agreed upon that India's biggest security challenges come from the internal domain, not from the external domain, because we have so many fault lines, and the biggest fault lines that India faces, the religious fault line. And particularly over the last 12 years, 10, 15 years, the communal relations have become very strained among the Hindus and Muslims, and the society has become extremely polarized, which has led to radicalization across the spectrum. And in this context, the role of the Islamist organizations like Jamaat-e-Islami becomes very critical, because we have seen what Jamaat-e-Islami has done in Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So to understand and to discuss, to explore what institutions like Jamaat-e-Islami can do in a society and how they work, how they operate, their long-term agenda objective, we have an eminent expert today with us, Dr. Frédéric Grare. So before I invite him to give his opening remarks, I would like to give a short introduction of Dr. Grare. Dr. Frédéric Grare is a French political scientist. Please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrongly.
It's all right. My name is Grare, but that's all right.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Frédéric Grare is a French political scientist, strategic affairs expert, and South Asia scholar. He holds a PhD in international relations from Graduate Institute of International Studies, Geneva, and has served as the director of the Centre des Sciences Humaines in New Delhi and as a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. His research focuses on political Islam, regional security, India-Pakistan relations, Kashmir, and South Asian geopolitics. He is the author of Political Islam in Indian Subcontinent, the Jamaat-e-Islami, and it's a seminal study of the ideology, evolution, and the regional influence of Jamaat-e-Islami across South Asia. So once again, a very warm welcome to you, Dr. Grare. And before we ask questions from our side, I would like to invite you to give your opening remarks.
Thank you very much. I don't really have opening remarks, since we are supposed to have a conversation here. Let me say that I'm a bit uneasy with the sort of framework that you established. I mean, if we speak of radicalization, if we speak of polarization, that it does make sense to discuss the Jamaat-e-Islami, and by way of consequence, security challenges as well. But it would be, I believe, a mistake to see the Jamaat-e-Islami as the source of all radicalization in South Asia, including within the Islamic spheres. And if I have to speak of the legacy of the Jamaat-e-Islami, its legacy is primarily political, and this is a serious contribution by Maududi to the concept of Islamic State. I mean, with Maududi, this is the end of the idea according to which a country is a Muslim state whenever the majority of population is Muslim. This is the very notion that the state itself has to be Islamic in order for the country to be a Muslim nation. And that changes a lot of things. But that very process itself is extremely interesting, because this is not something which happened overnight as the outcome of some sort of theological thinking. This is something which happened clearly in sort of a dialectic with colonization, modernization, assimilated to a large extent to westernization, but also the very notion of state, which is a very modern notion, which the Jamaat-e-Islami has combated at first before appropriating it, and therefore starting to change the very notion of what the state is and making the Islamic state. I mean, interestingly, if we recontextualize the whole thing in South Asia, it's worth noting that the Jamaat-e-Islami opposed initially the partition of India. You know, on the basis that it would break the Ummah. So if you accept that as an historical fact, it is quite clear that the very thinking of the state itself was not something obvious for the Jamaat-e-Islami at the outset. Second, this is once the state was created, it is interesting to see, and you have mentioned Kashmir in your introduction, that Maududi itself opposed the Pakistani state, who was at the same time having a ceasefire with India and Kashmir, but still supporting a resistance group in the valley and so on. So you have a new gradual evolution of Maududi within this context, and the Islamic state that is proposed is sort of a synthesis of all those notions, and in this constant interaction to that. He condemns socialism, secularism, but also nationalism and so on. So you see there is a constant evolution. What we've seen afterward in terms of security, the reference to the Jamaat-e-Islami in different contexts, which were more or less conflictual, is the consequence of what we've seen. And yes, the Jamaat-e-Islami has supported then war with India when it came to Pakistan against India and Bangladesh, has supported, again, as opposed, of course, the partition from Bangladesh, always on this very idea that the Ummah shouldn't be broken and so on, and has continued working accordingly. Now, after a while, what we do observe is a second phenomenon, which is that from the party to support an ideology, to support and promote an ideology, the ideology in order to justify and legitimize the existence of the party, which seems to be very often much more what we see today. This is the quite natural evolution of every political party, by the way, which once it is in the process of being in the partisan war against whoever is the opponent, tend to forget his ideological roots and focus mainly on day-to-day politics. This is something that you observe too with the Jamaat-e-Islami. So I'll start with those two constraints. I think that what we do observe today, be it in Bangladesh, be it in Pakistan, be it in Kashmir, is part of this whole mix of motivation and evolution.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Grare, for your very brilliant and insightful opening remarks. Now, I would like to begin with the questions that we have for you. Sir, in general, I would say, basically in the modern politics of the South Asian subcontinent, what is the role of Jamaat-e-Islami in reviving the Islamic thought?
Well, as I said, this is one of the movements which started questioning the consequences of colonialism, imperialism. Deobandi did the very same thing, started questioning why the caliphate had been subjugated by Western powers and so on. Started looking at the political, scientific thinking of the West, started to integrate them into their own thinking, and started to evolve from that. So that's basically where it all started, and that's where it led to. And as I was describing in my introduction earlier, this is what led gradually, but I insist, gradually to the concept of Islamic State.
And so, like when we talk about Jamaat-e-Islami, normally the notion is that it's more of a political entity. So, I mean, since you have studied the organization in depth, in your opinion, what exactly is the difference in the nature of functioning and the operational dynamics when it comes to organizations like Jamaat-e-Islami, Deobandi entities, and even like other entities like Ahle Hadith?
A lot of what we see is not is not decided by the ideology of the party, whether it's Deoband, whether it's Jamaat-e-Islami, and so on. This is basically decided by the sociology of the country or the region in which they operate. There is a fundamental difference, including in India itself, between the Jamaat-e-Islami in Kashmir and the Jamaat-e-Islami in the rest of the country, for obvious reasons. I mean, outside Kashmir, the majority of the population is Hindu or other faiths. So, you know, the idea that there could be something like an Islamic State doesn't make much sense. This is a very different situation in part of the countries where this identity is contested, where there is a willingness to sometimes get closer, if not integrated, with Pakistan, which is what the Jamaat-e-Islami in Kashmir has been supported for quite some time. And this is a different situation, obviously, in Bangladesh, where the vast majority of the population, again, is Muslim, and this is the same thing, the same thing in Pakistan. What's interesting is that the Jamaat-e-Islami is there, I'm talking of Bangladesh, Pakistan in particular, has been supporting the government sometimes, very often has been in clear opposition to the governments too, not because they were secular, but because they put the state before the very notion of Islamism. So the kind of state that they supported was completely anathema, for example, to what the military are actually asking. The military in Pakistan may be using Islamic rhetoric time and again. It doesn't mean that they do correspond to the sort of Islamistic ideal that a party like the Jamaat-e-Islami is supporting. Whenever the Jamaat-e-Islami has supported the state, like under Ziaulak, under which he was said to be very close to the dictator and very supportive of his initial policy, it has very quickly ended up in a split between the two. And sometimes it's clear repression. This is something that we have seen too in Bangladesh. And this is, at the end of the day, this is merely a political party operating among other political parties in specific contexts. So in terms of geopolitical alignment, it will clearly favor things which are aligned with this notion of Islamic State. Again, well, it's not an Islamic State. That way we look at the networks, that way we look at all those things that we tend to consider the primary raison d'etre of a party like the Jamaat-e-Islami. This is not the case, actually. What they're trying to do now is every institution has to be an Islamic institution. So there is this notion of an Islamic economy, which is something that beyond the idea of no interest and that kind of thing has no real content, and that Jamaat-e-Islami intellectuals, for example, have been fighting for decades to try to define. This is, well, of course, the Sharia has to be imposed and so on and so forth. This is not necessarily an ideology which is opposed to science and modernity, for example. But there is a clear willingness to distinguish between modernity and Westernization. So this is the kind of thing around which the Jamaat-e-Islami evolved. Now, in reality, in a country like Bangladesh, especially now in the current situation, this is just a political party among other political parties. Unless you want to talk, of course, about its own sociology, its own organization, this is a very elitist organization. Not everybody can become a member of the Jamaat-e-Islami. There is an initiation. You have to prove that you're capable of. There is a sort of intellectual ambition within the party, which has been the strength and the weakness of the party almost everywhere. The strength because it did protect the party against the repression, because it did work as sort of very close and very protected organization against the forces of repression. This had been a weakness because it never did translate into a mass organization, and therefore did meet some success in the election, never enough, for example, to seize power by itself anywhere in the world. neither in Pakistan, neither in Bangladesh, nor in Kashmir or anywhere.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gray. I'll come back to the organizational aspects of Jamaat-e-Islami later, and also the comparative dynamics of Jamaat-e-Islami and the Hindu right-wing organizations like RSS. But before that, I just want to ask that, with what you said, can we conclude that when it comes to the fundamentals in terms of ideology and objectives, Jamaat-e-Islami's various branches like Jamaat-e-Islami India, Jamaat-e-Islami Kashmir, Pakistan, they can have differences in the fundamentals,
They do
depending on
have
the
different
context.
names. Yes, they have different words because they operate in fundamentally different societies.
Okay.
And what's interesting to look at is the situation in India, because the Jamaat-e-Islami Kashmir and the Jamaat-e-Islami Ind are not functioning and do not have the same objective, despite the fact that they are in the same country. So, you can probably compare the Jamaat-e-Islami Jammu Kashmir more to Jamaat-e-Islami Pakistan than you can compare it to Jamaat-e-Islami Ind for the reason that was indicated. And by the way, they have been the only party at some point which was more or less supporting the idea of an integration within Pakistan. No other real political party did support that. So there is clearly a distinction. This is not something you see in the Jamaat-e-Islami Ind, for example, which is still somehow a revivalist movement, which is closer to the origins of the party than it is to this very political form that we've seen elsewhere.
And can you tell us a bit more about the internal organizational structure of Jamaat-e-Islami and the recruitment part? And the same, and one more question related to this. Often I've seen people discussing that, it's in terms of its organizational and operational aspects, it is similar to the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, which is the Hindu right-wing organization. Do you agree with it, or are there any similarities, or it's like completely out of the box comparison?
I don't really know the working of the RSS, the internal working of the RSS, nor others. They both, I think the comparison makes sense to the extent that they are both elitist organizations. At least they present themselves that way, that you don't become a member without proving yourself first. That there is a sort of an initiation period before you can actually become a member and so on. But, I don't know enough to say anything meaningful about the comparison between the two.
Thank you. And the internal structure, organizational and recruitment in Jamaat-e-Islami in places like Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan.
In which way? You still have, this is a very hierarchical thing. You do have the Amir, you do have the council and so on. And you usually start by being a member of the student branch of it, the Jamaat-e-Tulaba, and you go up the ladder gradually. Now, I would say, what I'm talking about is based on the research that I conducted several years ago now. And I did visit at the time Jamaat-e-Islami in the UK, in Pakistan, in GNK, in India, in Bangladesh. There was, as the party evolved, I don't know, I suppose so. I've seen, for example, in Pakistan, the Jamaat-e-Islami changing a bit. Now, in the sense that, and I'm talking of the intellectual aspiration of it, of which they were extremely proud at the very beginning. Maududi himself was an intellectual, extremely productive. He wrote something like 200 books or the equivalent of books or whatever. And there was this, when I started visiting them, there was this aspiration to being still an intellectual organization, which has, I think, at least for the period that I did observe them over a period of about 10 years, I did see that decline. And I suspect this is more or less the same thing everywhere. But I can't guarantee it if I am totally honest. So, but this is something that I did see, and that's why I'm also saying that, like every party, there is a phase in which the party as a translation of an ideology, the vector for the promotion of an ideology becomes something else. The ideology is the raison d'être, give the legitimacy to the party is not necessarily its main activity anymore. Now, there is, of course, a question of identity. If I belong to the Jamaat-e-Islami, I don't belong to another Islamic organization, and even less, of course, to an Hindu organization, and so on. But beyond this identity question, beyond the networks, I'm not sure, and I don't want to exaggerate this point, but I'm not sure that it does lead to much more than that. There is a moment that a party is just an electoral machine. And of course, there are trends that you don't observe elsewhere, but this is no longer the defining figure.
Thank you. So, government of India banned Jamaat-e-Islami in 2019 after the Pulwama Fidain attack. And here among the strategic quarters, generally it is alleged that Jamaat-e-Islami has maintained links with the terror groups on a regular basis since 1990. So can you throw some light on Jamaat-e-Islami Jammu and Kashmir and its links with the separatist ecosystem, terror groups, or the larger, I would say, terrorism-related ecosystem?
I mean, regarding the separatist ecosystem, they were part of the separatist ecosystem. They never hid it. You know, they made it very clear, unlike many other organizations which were much more careful about this. Now the specific links with the combatant, with the freedom fighters or the terrorists, no matter how you want to call them, specifically, I don't know. This wouldn't be surprising because since they support the accession to Pakistan, then they also have every reason to support whatever comes from Pakistan to damage in their situation in Jammu and Kashmir. But I have obviously no details about that. This is not something that they would write me about. Do you know that?
Thank you. And you mentioned that Jamaat-e-Islami has contested elections in Jammu and Kashmir in Pakistan, but they were never able to get enough votes. But having said that, my question is that, I mean, what's the nature of their relationship with the other mainstream political parties which actually form governments? And do Jamaat-e-Islami ever tries to get support from the mainstream political parties or create influences among the mainstream political parties to spread its activities in the society in general?
Well, first of all, as I said, they are very, in a way, close organization. They did participate in government, though, in Pakistan. So they are not alien to coalition, that kind of things, providing there is a sufficient base to be part of it. Beyond that, I'm not sure I really understand the question. I mean, everybody speaks to everyone,
Yes.
whether they come from the Jamaat-e-Islami or from whatever other political party.
I'll explain it. So in Jammu and Kashmir, we have come across that the People's Democratic Party, it's one of the main political parties, and its support base is in South Kashmir. And when People's Democratic Party got into power, it came with the heavy support of Jamaat-e-Islami, because Jamaat-e-Islami also has a very robust presence in South Kashmir. And after the PDP got into power, Jamaat-e-Islami used PDP's positions in the power to expand its influence in the universities, banking institutions, government entities like the administration, police, colleges, I mean, the social sphere. So my question is that, I mean, if you have some thoughts to discuss about this particular strategy of Jamaat-e-Islami.
Oh, this is something you observe more or less everywhere. This is something you observe in Pakistan. This is something, first of all, as I said, there are people usually well educated and which has this notion that education is important. So everywhere they are bound to participate in activities which are give them position of influence. Now, again, they are a limited network and they cannot be everywhere. I don't think they, I see your point, but I don't think that the importance should be exaggerated. And this is an organization which can be itself opportunistic when it comes to political alliances and so on, participation in government. This is an organization which is much more difficult to use in an opportunistic manners for external organization, because the Jamaat will penetrate institutions such as banks, universities, and so on, and they have been traditionally pretty strong in universities. In Pakistan, they were also in the polling business and that kind of things. And you see them in many walks of life. But they are, it takes more than just a simple sympathy for the Jamaat-e-Islami to become a member. So it works one way, not the other one. And even when they have tried in an environment which was much more conducive, and I'm referring again to Pakistan, they have had some success, but they also have had some limited success. I believe that their ideology sometimes has been a brake on their ambitions, on their political ambitions. When they supported military regime in Pakistan, it was always for a short period of time. Not that they wanted to leave the government, but after a while, even people as supportive to Islamization, such as Ziaulak, decided to get rid of them. So, you know, this is an interesting organization for that, who has set its own limit in a way, too idealistic in a way to be totally attractive. And what you see in other organizations, which have sometimes been more successful politically, is that precisely they have been more open, that the ideology has been less and much more diluted and so on. And politics and politics only was the thing which mattered.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Grare, you mentioned that Jamaat's one of the fundamental objective of Jamaat is about the establishing an Islamic state or the Islamization of the state. But it also contests in elections. So, keeping that objective, does it make sense, with that objective to even agree with the idea of a multicultural or a multi-party democracy? I mean, isn't that I would say, a fundamental contradiction between these two things?
Well, you know, the Jamaat-e-Islami has invented the concept of theo-democracy. That is, the institutions have to be Islamic. The policies that they are developing have to be Islamic, but the state is run by the Muslims collectively.
And
so
what's the
this
status
is sort of
of
an ideal model, which of course was never applied fully because it cannot really work. But this was the idea, this concept of democracy. So this is sort of a democracy within, which is exclusive of other religions, for example, quite clearly. At the same time, as I said, within one specific country, I'm referring here as much to Bangladesh as Pakistan. Yes, they can be part of coalition government.
and what's the status of non-Muslims in the Jamaat-e-Islami's idea of theo-democracy? I mean,
sorry, I didn't.
What's the status of non-Muslims in the Jamaat-e-Islami's
That's what I'm saying.
concept of
If you are outside you're not part of it. You're not part of the state. So you're not part of that democracy. So this
they'll
is a
be second-grade
democracy, precisely.
They will be second-grade citizens, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And lately, we have seen that, well, I mean, Jamaat definitely is being discussed as a political, social, ideological group. But we've seen that in Bangladesh, Jamaat in its rhetoric has gone very extremely anti-India and the anti-minorities in Bangladesh. Even in Jammu and Kashmir, I've come across various cases where Jamaat-e-Islami has maintained a very harsh and I would say, and extremist gesture against the minority. So somehow, I mean, do you agree that, that's actually, isn't that problematic? I mean, it keeps a democratic first face, but then in many ways, its approach is very extremist and I would say akin to the terror groups. I mean, this is just a thought that
Well,
I'm sharing. I would like to know your thoughts on this.
I agree with the fact that this is problematic. Going to terror group is one step further. That has to be examined in a case-by-case approach, because I don't think in Bangladesh they need to be terror group, at least not any more than any other party. In the kind of behavior and the level of polarization or radicalization of the Jamaat-e-Islami, there is also the interaction with the opponents. So if you mention Bangladesh, the Jamaat-e-Islami has been in clear opposition to Hasina for quite some time. And since Hasina was seen as being supported by India, by extension, India was to be rejected as well. And so
Yes.
the Jamaat-e-Islami was clearly anti-India. And so on. First of all, the Jamaat-e-Islami was anti-India from day one because they did oppose the partition of Bangladesh.
Yes.
Their role in the genocide at the time and so on, that they don't even hide in reality. I mean, and so on. So yes, this is problematic. As far as terror group, this is something different. Probably yes, in some cases. I suspect that in GNK they have had some link. Did they organize themselves? Were they themselves a terror group? That I'm not sure. Did they have connection with it? Most likely.
Thank you.
And did the Jamaat-e-Islami Pakistan do the same thing? Obviously.
Yes. Yeah, that's what even we have been discussing, because I have frequently traveled to Jammu and Kashmir, and there we saw that Jamaat runs various schools basically, and the curriculum in the schools is a problem. So I guess lately the government has put severe restrictions on the Jamaat affiliated schools, the schools affiliated to their Falai Armed Trust, because the curriculum, I mean, though it combines the modern education, sciences, and everything, but then the core ideological part is quite problematic, and it doesn't align with the democratic and multicultural constitutions. I mean, just sharing it with you. So coming to my next question, sir, do you think that are there any similarities between Jamaat-e-Islami and Muslim Brotherhood, and linkages also?
Linkages, yes. Historically, yes, but they are not the same organization. I mean, clearly, Sayyid Qutb has been influenced by the writings of Maududi. And in turn, the Muslim Brotherhood helped, for example, structure the Jamaat-e-Tulaba in Karachi at the beginning of the movement. But I mean, they are really two distinct organizations operating in very distinct sphere. So yes, they meet occasionally, but the idea of a vast networks doesn't really make much sense. This is loose. This is sometimes individuals and so on. But this notion is something that I would take with a pinch of salt.
Thank you. Just before I open the house for the questions from the audience, one question that I have is that what's the nature of the Jamaat's links with the, I would say, charity groups and religious groups in the Western world? Like in US, we see many organizations like Islamic Circle of North America, then you have the Kashmir Canadian Council, Kashmir American Council. There are umpteen number of groups. Likewise, in Europe also, we are told that the Jamaat affiliated groups are working. Can you throw some light on these linkages?
Honestly, this is not something I've looked at for a long time. As I said earlier, I did look at the Jamaat-e-Islami in the UK. Again, they operate in a different environment. So what they do, what the connections are, I'm not able to tell you because I just don't know.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for your very insightful remarks and answers to our questions. So now I open the house for the questions from the audience. Please feel free to unmute yourself and raise your questions. We have an amazing expert here today. It's very rare that such people, come and they're willing to give very honest answers to the questions. So please feel free.
Good Afternoon, sir. I have a question for yourself, sir. How do you see the possibility of the revival of Jamaat in Kashmir and the possibility of shifting their ways to more covert manners after the ban on it post 2019? Do you think that's possible? Do
Whether
you
they
think
should,
that the ban is going to significantly dismantle the ecosystem?
well, you know, you're asking me whether the policy of your government is pushing the Jamaat undercover. Yes, obviously. Will they, how strong the repression will be? I don't know. Depending on how strong it is, the revival will be what it is because, you know, I understand that the idea is more or less to eliminate them. Whether they'll be successful or not, I don't know. But you know, you have the answer to your own question or the same uncertainty that, you know, I cannot answer to a specific situation that I haven't seen for quite some time.
Thank you.
Ruchika? Yeah. You have a question, Ruchika?
Yeah.
Quickly.
So I just wanted to mention that Islami Pakistan is actively forging alliances with Hamas. It has also advocated for opening Hamas offices in Pakistan. So how this should be viewed by India, considering that we have not designated Hamas as a terrorist organization? I
did
mean,
not understand the question. Sorry, I didn't hear it very well.
Should I explain, Ruchika? Should I?
sure,
So
sir, sure.
she's asking that lately Hamas officials have visited Pakistan and they're meeting Jamaat-e-Islami. Jamaat-e-Islami, Pakistan is endorsing Hamas's presence and outreach in Pakistan. Likewise, you know, I mean, their ties with Jammu and Kashmir, Jamaat-e-Islami also are very supportive for Hamas's presence. So she's asking, how should India look at that?
Well, this is a question that India has to ask itself. I think
But
that
in
is
your opinion, sir, what are your thoughts on
no. Look,
Jamaat-e-Islami's?
I have no particular sympathy for Hamas or anything, and I don't think that Hamas is a respectable movement. Now, you know, there is also an expression of support for the Palestinian right now, which is also, by the way, the position of the Indian government. So, you know, India will do whatever it wants to. This is not my business to tell India what it has to do. I would be very surprised if India did allow connections between Hamas and the Jamaat-e-Islami in India and so on. That would be quite opposite to everything it's been doing so far.
Yes, and that's true. I agree. But sir, coming to Europe, so I don't have a very, I would say, fairly precise idea of Hamas's status in most of the European countries. I'm sure in some European countries they must have banned it, or in some of them it may not be banned. Okay, so, but sir, in your opinion, if Jamaat-e-Islami has, you know, it develops ties with Hamas in countries like Pakistan, maybe operational or ideological engages,
No, look,
does that is functioning in the European countries?
no, but I mean, the Jamaat-e-Islami in the European countries is non-existent except in the UK. And this is linked to the strong presence of a South Asian diaspora there. And this is linked also in the presence of certain type of people within this diaspora in terms of socio-economic background. So, you know, again, one should not exaggerate the importance of Jamaat-e-Islami. I've never heard of the Jamaat-e-Islami in France, for example. I've never heard of the Jamaat-e-Islami in Germany. It doesn't mean that eventually people from this organization have not traveled to those countries and so on. It means that they have no significant presence and they have no condition to operate politically significantly. As I said, even if they have met somewhere people from the Hamas, they are not the Hamas. they don't follow the same logic, and there is an expression of sympathy, of support maybe, but this is not the same organization. So we shouldn't, I don't think we should be looking too deep into that sort of connection or its impact in Europe and so on. I don't think that this is a problem at all. What Europe thinks of Islamic threat, for example, I think of ISIS, I think of Al-Qaeda, I think of that kind of movement. The Jamaat-e-Islami is nowhere on the picture.
Yeah, and so since you mentioned a lot about, I would say, Jamaat's presence in UK, so that's one area, like, we are really curious about. So how exactly it functions in UK? I mean, and its base support base and the organizational structure. Can you just throw some light on that?
Not really. I mean, they are in northern England mostly, where you do have a strong South Asian diaspora, as I mentioned. Most likely, most of the time, middle class, in a socioeconomic background where they can exist because they can help the population there. This is a quite deprived part of the country, and so on. Beyond that, their activities are quite limited.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I guess with this, we come to the conclusion of our today's discussion. And once again, I would like to extend a very warm and heartfelt thanks to Dr. Frédéric Grare for sparing his time and joining us today at Usanas Foundation. And sir, we look forward to inviting you to India for our offline conferences. Every year, we organize this prestigious Maharana Pratap Annual Geopolitics Dialogue in partnership with the Ministry of External Affairs India. And we invite experts from across the world discussing various topics related to religious extremism, general geopolitical issues, West Asia, environment. So it's a very, I would say, conference which addresses diverse topics, and we would like to continue our engagement with you, invite you to this major conference and our other offline and online events. Once again, a very, I would say, sincere thanks to you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Bye.